Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowdon Deli. I'm Rand from CJD, along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette, and our special guest today, Sophie Fouron, who is here, a host, TV journalist, and Woman About Town.
Oh, yes, okay? I like that. Woman
right.
About Town.
There are a lot of things. Oh, by the way, you want to mention you have a new TV show that people might want to check out. And I love that we're doing this today because too often we're not really bridging the gap here between some of what happens in English and some of what is available in French. And this idea, I think, the one that you're doing now, Chassé Croisé, really interesting. So explain just off the top what that is.
Well, it's a show about Montrealers, actually. It's a social quilt of the people here. We actually thought it would be interesting to go out on the town and meet people, total strangers, and just find out a little bit about their story. So I didn't know, starting our filming, what I was going to expect or who I was going to meet. The premise was everybody has a story. We just have to stop and ask people about their story. And it's been quite a ride because it was exhausting, but also thrilling and moving, actually, because people opened up, and it was probably the best gig of my career, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw the first 3 episodes, and I was very, very impressed because as we have done streeters many times over the years, going up to people, and you never know what to expect, and you just went right up there. And I know that sometimes, yes, people are very willing to talk, and other times people, the last thing in the world they
throw
want.
anything at you? No.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
They didn't throw anything, but they left. They ran. Some of them ran, and we couldn't film them because they didn't sign the release to be on the show. But I have to say that half of them were completely random strangers, but some of them were thrown my way by the production team because, as you know, making a TV show, we have a budget, we have a limited time, and we had to have people already casted to make the show. But total strangers, it was like a blind date.
And
they said,
some
go
of the stories
out
you
there.
uncovered were amazing. Like people like doctors that I never would have guessed in a million years.
Because we judge books by their cover.
Absolutely,
we do. We all have them.
You had a psychiatrist. They just I would have thought they were anything but. But anyway, and their stories as they unfolded, and many of them were immigrants here from Senegal, from different parts of the world, and France, and trying to fit in. It's fascinating.
Did you cry, Bill?
I cried.
There you go.
Cried.
Yes, everybody cries. The show is so well done.
Well, I should tell you, Bill cried at Game of Thrones as well, so I'm not sure.
No, I never cried at Game of Thrones. Never cried at Game of Thrones.
When Khaleesi got hurt, I think you cried.
But it's risky. I mean, you just don't know. Like Dave and I, who's doing the video here, we've done many of these types of things, and sometimes people know you and they talk, and sometimes people know you and don't want to talk.
Exactly.
And others just don't want any part of media attention whatsoever. They have stories that they don't want told.
Absolutely. It is risky, but then I realized that people actually wanted to talk. They were happy that I was interested in them and opened up, and I also realized the power of the conversation like we're having now. The power of, real talk and actually looking at someone in the eye and just, asking them a bit about what they're going through. And every episode has a theme. So it's either
fire.
Yeah, stories about fire, stories about limits or celebration. So there was some guidance when I was going up to them.
Did you run into any politicians?
No.
Okay, good. Then let's move on. All right. Let me begin by talking about something in the news that I want you to weigh on from your perspective. We had a ruling in the city of Montreal about a week or so ago that basically said, you know what, finally, let's admit systemic racism exists in the city. We have talked too often times about driving while black and how that still is a thing. We had an incident literally 2-3 days ago in Laval where a man from Toronto, basically minding his own business, not even in his car, outside just walking on the sidewalk. I think many people have seen that video, basically overpowered by police. I had him on my radio show. I think he said at one point there were 12 officers there to deal with this one particular person. So systemic racism, according to this ruling, does exist in the SPVM. It's something that, of course, the Premier has sought to deny. I know that the mayor has said, look, we know it exists, but doesn't want to call it systemic. What do you make of this ruling? Because this opens the door, from what I understand, to anyone who has ever been through this to go ahead and sue the city.
I think the most important part of it is that people are realizing that it's not something, out of our imagination. It's when a court of law says it's real, it's happening, and the city of Montreal will have to pay these people, but I don't know if they're gonna I don't know how many people are gonna actually ask for their $5,000 or I think it's the idea of it that finally it's realized that there is systemic racism and social racial profiling. And it's just reassuring to the people who have been living with this for years that it's recognized. To me, that's the most important part of it.
But I don't understand how they can't crack down on this. What is it that so triggers white cops about seeing black people in nice cars, not even nice cars, sometimes not even in cars at all? Why is this such an issue here? It's everywhere. I mean, in the States, they do with Tyreek Hill, big Miami Dolphin football player.
The tension when when you watch those videos, it's so uncomfortable to watch. I think it's social construction. It's also what we see. It's what the media portrays. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, why cops are so tensed and quick on the trigger even. I don't know. It's something that needs to be deconstructed, really. But the body cams are helping. The social media is helping. George Floyd has been filmed.
But you wonder, in the case of this gentleman from Laval, or in the case of Laval, if there had not been someone, a friend, filming this on his phone,
how many times there was no camera footage?
Like it's happened tons of and dozens of times before. Now it's being filmed, so things are being discussed, and courts are listening to lawsuits and all that. It's I think it will come eventually to some kind of balance. I don't know. It's such a pickle.
Yeah. To Bill's point, though, you'd have to think that if it's the police, right, training would have to begin somewhere along the line. And this is interesting because the police have said along the line as well, up until now, there is training before you become a cop because they know these things happen. Yet it doesn't seem to have changed an awful lot, even with Fadi Daguerre, right, who went out of his way when he was in Longueuil as the head guy there to deal with it. Nothing seems to have changed in the city.
I hope that Fadi Daguerre will help things evolve because he's very well aware of what's going on. He said that he himself, when he was a cop, actually did some racial profiling and was completely. He admits it. I think with the younger cops, the women cops, the more diversity in the crews, in the force, things will evolve. It's there. It needs to change. I hope we're better off than in the States. But when we see what's going on just, a couple of days ago, it's very disturbing.
I was going to say that's a pretty low bar.
Yeah.
Regarding
it is. It's like they're in the dawn of a civil war, but anyway.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Deli, serving Montrealers since 1946 and home of the city's best smoked meat sandwich, the Snowdon Deli, DeCarry Boulevard, north of Queen Mary Road.
I have friends, black friends, who said, at the youngest age, as soon as they got their license, you're going to probably get stopped by the police by their parents. Yeah. Be very polite.
They have the talk.
They have that talk.
They have
and I've heard that over and over
again. The talk
again.
is.
You've had that?
We haven't had the talk in my house because, my dad is from Haiti, my mom is Quebecoise, and we were three girls, light skin, doing living in mostly white environments, I guess, when I think about it. And they didn't have the talk with us. I just think it's so sad when I think about the talk when the black parents tell their kids, you have to behave when you go out, when you drive.
And you will be stopped.
And you will be stopped, and you will be scrutinized, and you will be discriminated. And I mean, you guys didn't have that talk with your kids, so I mean,
But it's funny. I hear you say this, and I think to myself, no, we didn't have the talk as white kids, if you will. But I knew enough that if I got stopped by a cop for whatever reason, and yes, for speeding, for whatever it was, I didn't try to start anything. He would come over to the car, I would roll down my window, license, registration, and hand it off, and that would pretty much be the end of it. I have seen too many others where it becomes confrontational so early. And I think to myself, why is that your reaction? And it almost makes you wonder if the talk was a good idea or not a good idea, right? You are going to get stopped, but when you get stopped, your default should be, yes, sir, here's my license and registration.
We're not blaming the black kids.
I'm
here.
just saying, I've seen too many instances where it becomes confrontational too early.
Well,
I don't know if I'm blaming anybody.
I just think it's a trigger, like for a white cop to see.
It's just unfair. It's been unfair for decades. Centuries. The rapport is just completely unbalanced. So I would be triggered. I mean, just talking about it makes me, flush. It's something that is just so, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, and it's huge discrimination.
Again, you seem to get a little triggered when I said that. And
Yes.
what I'm saying is, if I get pulled over and you get asked for your license and registration, the first thing I say is not, why are you pulling me over? What did I do? I had a feeling I was either going too fast. I kind of have a feeling what I did. But I see now, and maybe you're right, maybe it's the cops who first asked that question, looking at that person, seeing him or her as a black person, and taking it up a notch that they wouldn't with someone else.
Ask,
maybe.
what did I do? Why are you stopping
exactly.
me?
But it's it's not.
Well, if I've ever, I do the same thing, and I've never, ever been treated like without courtesy, like whatever I've done, and it hasn't been that many occasions. But the point being, I would always ask, what have I done? I just don't know.
I mean, Aaron, you've seen the inequities, and you've seen the injustice,
Sure.
and it's just. It just has to stop. And yes, I would be frustrated. I am frustrated just watching it. Imagine living it over and over and over again just because you have a different skin color.
Listen, I agree 100%. I'm not trying to suggest that, it's I'm not black. I've never been in that situation. I never will be in that situation, so I don't have that perspective. But you're right. We've seen it happen. And when you just said it now over and over, there's one person, and I remember him having been stopped something like 20 times.
Yeah.
Over and over again,
and which
is crazy.
At the beginning, you're polite, I'm sure, and you hand out your papers and all. But after like 12, 14, 20 times,
down.
I
get
mean,
it.
you have
Absolutely.
you have to ask, what the hell did I do to
Yeah.
It's just because of the color of my skin. Come
and
on.
And the kind of car. I notice a lot of Mercedes and things like that. They get really upset by that for whatever reason.
And in 2020, I mean, even before, I mean, it breaks my heart every time. It really does.
You've never had to deal with any kind of issues over the years?
Well, not that many, but I've been asked if I was the nanny twice.
Nice. Yeah.
Super nice.
Yeah.
With my baby lighter than me, and people just
You're talking about
assume.
people on the street?
Yes. People assume that I'm the nanny, and it was. I didn't experience a lot of racism. I have to admit. But it just, those episodes where I was asked by two strangers if I was the nanny because I was, darker.
Because you're a lighter skinned baby.
My husband is from L'Ancienne Lorette in Quebec City. Great spot. Anyways, so it was very humiliating, actually. I didn't know what to respond, and I have a few. Afterwards, I was like, I should have answered this,
Sure.
and I couldn't believe that people just assume. And the nerve, are you the nanny? You make a very good nanny. You make a very good nanny because I was like, I don't know, giving her some fruit or whatever. Imagine that.
No, I can't.
So what is it like? So when you hear the premier, and this has happened repeatedly, refusing to acknowledge that systemic racism exists, what message does that send?
It's awful. I think I don't know why is continuously refusing to admit it. It's just to put your head in the sand. It's insulting to the people who are living with racism daily. I think to improve a situation, you have to acknowledge it. You have to talk about it. The courts are saying it exists. The chief of police is saying it exists. I don't know why he doesn't. The premier doesn't want to say that it exists. It exists everywhere. In North America, Quebec and Canada didn't have segregation like the States did, but they did have. Different types of racism. When you grow up black, you don't have the same experience, and it's harder to get an apartment, get a job, get it black or Arab or any different name. And I think you have to realize the systemic barriers. They're invisible barriers. That's what it is basically. It's more difficult to get ahead. Now, if you realize that, you have different programs, and I'm all about helping out and figuring out all together what we can do to improve, so we can all live better and we can have a better social a quilt again.
But so given all that, though, and you seem kind of optimistic, but are you really optimistic that anything is going to change significantly enough that we won't be talking about this in a year or 2 or 5 from now?
I don't know if you have kids or what age they are, but I have hope in the next generations. I think they're way ahead of all the governments and all that's going on up there. I think the kids today are open to the world with social media. And even if they're in La Tuque or Val d'Or or Hampstead or what have you, they have access to the world, and it's the hues of life. So I think that our kids and the next generations will be better. I hope that it'll come with them.
You've traveled the world. A lot of what you're reporting has been TV stuff. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot of travel shows. Does this same mentality exist elsewhere, outside of North America?
I've traveled for 6 years for TV5, and it was fantastic. And I was always comfortable where there were people from all over living well together. Like in New Zealand is a great place. I was not comfortable in the Asian countries. I love them, like in Korea, or when you're a minority, ethnic minority, and some people told me you don't look Canadian, which was very interesting, but whatever. It's funny when immigration is not as important in some countries. I didn't feel that comfortable. That being said, when I came home in Montreal, I always said, this is the best place on earth. And I told Billy that yesterday. I really think Montreal is one of the best cities on the planet for its diversity, for its openness, for its weather, for its...
It's weather? Wait a second.
What? It's weather?
You never told me that about the weather.
For its
Are
weather.
you not here in the winter? Do you travel?
You're traveling.
And yes, winter is coming.
Wow.
I love the Four Seasons. I think it's one of the only places on earth where we live the 4 seasons, and I hope that lasts forever too. Anyways, but the language. The language wars, the language battles were actually, I think that, it gave us, it's a rich and diverse place, and I wouldn't live anywhere
You know, it's funny you say that. I love that you said the language wars because, of course, this has been going on forever.
Yeah.
Yet we keep hearing more and more every time this comes up now because of Bill 96, because of the OQLF directives, where people will say the government is the one trying to basically perpetuate that language war. People in the street, people you talk to, people you interview, Francophone, Anglophone, it doesn't exist. Everyone gets along, but this government seems to be focused on trying to, as they say, divide and not sort of bring together. Is that what you
Only
find?
to curry favor with the nationalist base at that.
Yeah, I think again that the kids today, they so don't care. When we talk about what happened in the 70s and the 80s, they were like, why did you fight over that? Which I get, and when, I talk to my kids about how tense it was, because I, lived in Snowdon and NDG, and I mean, there were Anglos,
Yeah.
but they were like a lot fights. It was actual fights, but today, it's not that important. Not that language isn't important, but it's a different world we live in. So yeah, I
That's
think
hopeful.
it is. Yes, I'm very hopeful. Did you get
Yeah.
that one?
No, but the fact that you're saying
is,
you're probably right. Social media has changed so much.
Oh my gosh.
But kids today, as you just said, maybe this isn't an issue for them anymore. They're doing this every day, and they don't have a problem English, French, or English.
They don't-
In fact, they may be too much English for the government to want to say, you know what, we have to limit your social media.
Maybe I think French has to be preserved, and I think we have laws that are helping that. I mean, when we think, we have to agree that Bill 101 was fantastic, right?
Some of it.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, no.
We have to almost
what-
50 years later.
Yeah.
We have to admit
That's
No, what
not
we
an
have to-
issue for us any longer.
that's
think
it.
what we
That's
have
not
to
an issue.
admit-
But imagine, you remember? Yeah.
I think what we have to admit is the fact that everyone, Anglo-Franc or anybody else, believes that French is important, needs to be preserved.
Right.
That's a given.
Right.
And when a government tries to suggest that it's not, in other words, if you're an Anglophone, you don't think it is, that's just a lie. It's not. We all agree that should happen. But, you talk about Bill 101, I think back to when this came into effect, and suddenly, signs, as an Anglo, your sign that was on a store went to being half as big as the one in French, and we thought, really? What is that? So there are some things in there that rub people the wrong way.
Of course, in school.
But okay,
Yeah.
we're here now. It's 50
Yeah.
years later, and we can leave that behind. And as they say, all try to get along. But sometimes, you have a government that thinks it's not a good idea. Let's try to make that divide even bigger than it is.
And the divide, sorry, Bill, you wanted to say something, but the language, even like the hijab and they try to make a huge deal about it. My kids, they're like, she can wear whatever she wants if that's what she wants.
Yeah.
And the police lady who wanted to be in the police but couldn't, and my kids couldn't believe that she was stopped. And it's another level of understanding, and it's true that the government here and all over the world, they want to divide, and they
Well, it's their political
souffle sur ses
ticket.
braises,
Yeah.
It's political. They wanted to tell people you shouldn't think like that, and that they shouldn't wear it, and then people think that's actually okay. But when you talk to the people on the street, that's
what I was going to say.
It's not what I hear.
I noticed that, from what I've seen, that language didn't come up, in your your interviews with people at Winston Conference, with your discoveries. Nobody brought that up that I saw. Saying that's a major issue in terms of their lives and everything else.
No, it did. Well, it didn't come up. You know what came up though? A lot of French from France.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Oh
yeah.
my God! In Parc La Fontaine, I was like, okay, we have to switch neighborhoods because that's all we're
But their
getting.
attitude, their problems were French Canadians and people from France.
Yeah.
There's a whole other can of worms.
Exactly,
there. Yeah.
and that's another topic. But no, language didn't come up, and I mean, you hear people speak French and English and Spanish and Arabic, and they go to school in French, and that's it.
They had an opportunity to beef, but they didn't beef about that.
That's it.
Which is
it wasn't
I find
top
very
of mind, which is great.
Exactly.
By the way, did you run into any Anglos?
Of course.
Yes, you did actually.
Yes, but it's a show that's on TV5.
Ah, je comprends.
Alors,
Ouais,
il
ouais.
fallait qu'on soit en français, il fallait qu'on parle français. Alors, maybe I'll do it in English for another channel, but I would love to go to Fairview Point Claire and do the chassé croisé there.
Really?
For that. Yeah.
Good luck finding a parking spot.
Or
All right.
Royal Mount now. We'll see.
We are out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming by.
Already?
This is a lot of fun. Yeah, it kind of flew
Well,
by.
actually, I wanted to ask you one more question. Are you excited? We talked about this. Kamala in the States. Are you excited about the prospect of having the first black woman on top, black woman president?
I'm sure, Bill, you are excited.
Yes, I am.
Imagine how I feel.
Yeah.
We're all Kamala. It gives me goosebumps. I cry when I see her. I have parties planned for her inauguration already.
Are you serious?
I'm optimistic. I just think that we're celebrating normalcy somehow. Is that a word? Normalcy.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely a word.
Calm instead of chaos.
Not used around these parts often, but yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure she's not perfect, and we don't know what's going on, backstage or in those levels of government. But I just like the fact that she's got common sense, that she's got, it's just...
And a Montreal background.
And a Montreal background. I wish I knew her back then so I could, party with her. I like the fact that she likes to hang out with her kids or her husband's kids. Just normal. Like Tim Walz, hanging out with their kids. How normal is that? We've never seen that with Trump and his kids, whatever. You know what that means. Prosecutor, I think she's a scholar.
You certainly prosecuted him well in the debate.
How did that go?
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we go about talking about eating dogs and cats, I'm going to say thank you very much for being with us
I'm gonna
today.
have that.
You can take
No,
it.
you-
I don't even
you
know
get
what
the
that looks
liver.
like, but you're more
I
than
get
welcome
the
to take that home. All right. That wraps up another edition of the Quarter Booth Podcast here at the Snowdon Deli. We'll see you again soon.